This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Rock and Roll Denim, Bill Fick Ford, the WCRA, and Resistol.
Attention all rodeo athletes. Join us for the Cowtown Christmas Championship Rodeo in December. Over $360,000 in prize money in the historic Cowtown Coliseum in Fort Worth, December 14th through 17th. And no entry fees. Qualify using the VRQ for the Triple Crown of Rodeo $1 million cash bonus, featured on a CBS network broadcast. To get started, go to the App Store, download the WCRA Rodeo app, and hit nominate. This is your chance to rodeo in December. Nominate today or visit us at WCRArodeo.com.
Guys, another year has ticked by, challenging year, but there was somebody you could rely on if you needed a new Super Duty pickup, and that was Bill Fick Ford. Once again, the #1 Super Duty dealer in the entire country. You guys have seen what's going on in the car business, in the truck business. You're seeing trucks being sold for thousands above MSRP. Well, if you go to Bill Fick Ford, it doesn't matter where you are at in the continental U.S., he will take care of you. He will stand by the product, and he will not take advantage of you. Guys, Bill Fick Ford is the only place you can go in 2022 for a no-bull discount. Bill Fick Ford.
What sets Resistol apart is the legacy of the cowboys who wear the brand. These traditions are passed down from fathers to sons, from heroes to future champions. Since 1927, Resistol has been handcrafting the finest American-made cowboy hats. Generation after generation, we live it every day.
This is The Gauge with host Chance Conradu.
Are you freaking serious? It's Conrado. This is The Gauge, and I am Chance Conrado. On this episode of the podcast, we have got Sage Kimzey. Sage is literally a sage. He is like a monk. He's unbelievable. Very well-spoken guy, and he leaves so much valuable stuff on the table. And I don't need to say any more. Check it out. StubHub. That's where they're pushing everybody to buy tickets now.
Yeah, for the NFR this year.
Mm-hmm.
The official fan-to-fan marketplace
Ooh.
of the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo.
It's almost like you just did that.
Too many times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of what happens when you win and you kind of become the face of all the promotions.
Yeah, I'm fine with it, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than having a real job, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, what would be your real job if not for the sport of bull riding?
I'd probably be an attorney.
Really?
Yeah. Just kind of something. Always been good at arguing. So
yeah.
Kind of just seems like the route to go down.
Yeah, but you are married, so that's like
there is that.
If you're going to be married long term, you got to be able to hold your own in an argument.
Yeah. Or just be able to walk away from one. I feel like that's,
you know what? That's actually the power move, right?
Yeah.
It's like just and,
yeah, I mean, you can be as smart as you want to, but like at some point you're just not going to be right. So
no.
There's that.
Yeah, and if you're married to a formidable woman, she's going to dismantle everything, whether it's logic or not.
My wife would rip me to pieces, so it's just like, okay, honey.
It's all you.
Bye.
Yeah, and then you just had a baby, right, recently, and that adds a whole nother layer of complexity and anger.
There is no doubt, yeah. It's not so much the anger, it just adds like a very like difficult place that you're in, because it's like you're running on about 3 hours sleep. Immediately, that makes everything difficult.
Yes.
And then no matter what's going on, you got a screaming baby in the background that you're trying to soothe. So you're just like, this is not ideal.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a guy who's taken on a lot of challenges in your life. And where do you rank adding the baby?
As far as like challenging, I don't know. Like it's not like really that difficult, but it's definitely like it's the highest level of responsibility that I've ever had.
It's kind of freaky, right?
Yeah. Like the fact that for the most part, like that child's life pretty well depends on you for X amount of time. Like,
yeah,
that's daunting.
It is. Yeah, and well, I mean, it automatically sounds like you're a guy who takes it seriously, because there's other parents out there like, yeah, this little shit can fend for himself.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's multiple styles of parenting, I guess.
I guess.
But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, you just look back like at all of your preconceived ideas, and I mean all this. There's a lot of stuff that you learn that stays with you for life that your parents teach you. So
Yeah. What were your parents like?
Much more on the he's got this, he can fend for himself. They just like kind of let us do, whatever we wanted to.
Really?
I mean, I don't know. Obviously, not at this stage. I don't remember when I was a 5-month-old. I'm sure they were waiting on me hand and foot, just like I am.
I mean, if
Little
you're
Steel.
alive.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know though. I mean, yeah, we were just always kind of like outside, just doing our things. Mom was around a lot. Dad was still rodeoing quite a bit. So
Yeah.
it was yeah. I mean, mom was there more than Dad was, like in my memory of like young childhood, just because he was gone so much. But yeah, I mean, we just kind of like grew up country living,
Yeah. I mean, we
riding
lived
horses,
in
doing whatever.
a damn horse trailer. And back then, like in the early 90s, they weren't what they are today.
Yeah, they were true horse trailers, not
Yeah, they weren't
Taj
like
Mahal on
live-in.
wheels.
Yeah, if you ever see like the old rusty stock trailers, we had this old black stock trailer and then like a mattress in it. No air conditioning, no windows. It was just like, this is how we're doing it.
Perfect.
You as a kid, you loved that though.
Oh yeah, it's all about what you know, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you knew like a Prevost bus and then you go to that, you're probably going to want to kill yourself.
Well, I mean, there's some beauty in simplistic things too.
You know what? That's true, right? And that's probably something you've probably felt, right? Because when you start to achieve at high levels, doors start to open up, right? Whether that be in a sport like you or a business or whatever, kind of the more you achieve, the more you get as a consequence. And is that something that you've often thought about as you've seen your success? Like, do you miss the real simple stuff?
Well, like I grew up like a lot of rodeo guys, like pretty humble beginnings. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we had some money, but it wasn't like we're making $500,000 a year riding bulls.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess like I just appreciate like both sides of the coin now, I guess. Like,
Right.
because yeah, I mean, it's just different. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like better or worse. I mean, it's extremely nice that, my wife and I don't have to scrounge together the pennies to go, buy baby formula. Like, we don't have to worry about anything like that. And I'd say that's probably the one thing that like having success and money and opportunities and everything that's bought me is just like more peace of mind than anything.
That, you know what, that's exactly what it is. Because I mean, we come from very humble beginnings as well, and I've been very blessed in different reasons. You chose rodeo, I chose business, my sister chose rodeo. But you kind of, if that's a goal, you get to that place to where like just that base level of living is taken care of, and it changes your mindset on stuff.
Oh yeah.
Does it worry you with your kid? Like, because you grew up more humble. I know I didn't. I have kids, and it's like the fear is like, man, what are these kids going to be like if they don't have to have that struggle? You ever think about that?
For sure. Yeah. Because I mean, obviously, like the struggle is what shapes you really, you know what I mean? Like that's what gives you just a different perspective more than anything. And like, it definitely made me like a lot tougher. And yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Right. Like all you want is your kid's life to be better than yours, right? At the end of the day, like whatever that looks like, whether you're talking about money or fun things that they go do or success, or
Right.
like you just want them to be better people than what you are. And yeah, I mean, without some sort of struggle, where does the extreme personal growth come from? And I can't answer that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because I know people who haven't struggled, not in rodeo or anything. Well, maybe some, and you probably do too. And it's like there's a level of like formative that some of those people are like, just doesn't even have to be a specific person, and then like they hit a roadblock, right? And then that's what that is. Everything stops.
Oh.
Whereas if you're going to achieve stuff like you have, because you've had to overcome a lot of obstacles just by the nature of, I mean, anybody who strapped themselves to a 2,000-pound animal and decides they're going to take that on, immediately that's adversity just by default, which is why it's so great to get to talk to somebody like you. Because, I mean, there's been other people who have achieved amazing things in bull riding, but you're the guy who's done it consistently in our modern time. Mm-hmm. Which means you're a great person to ask these questions because it may be different. Like it doesn't matter what the sport is. Like there's something you can offer from your journey that anybody doing anything can get value from. And so that is a big question. Like, and I want to know a little bit about you when you were younger and how you kind of developed that mental fortitude to handle all the adversity and continue to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. That's a really good question. For me, it's always trying to find like motivating factors, right? Because it's one of those deals like it starting out, it was okay, well, you know, I want to do this as a career, I want to make money doing this. Cool. You know, 19-year-old kid had a great rookie year, you know, won several $100,000. It's like, okay, well, my plans just changed, right? Because it's not, and especially like now, like you fast forward 5 years into that, you know, I was averaging probably around $600,000, you know, a year. And it's crazy to think about, you know, like being that young, making that much money. But it's like, okay, well, like money is not really a good driving force anymore, you know. And it seems like there's like little things that just kind of shift my motivation all the time about like, no, like I just want to go out and be the best. But for me too, it's never really been like, I've had this gigantic mountain ahead of me of like winning the 9 gold buckles, right? So it's not really like me competing against, you know, whoever at the time, like J.W. Harris, you know, Trey Benton, moving forward to recent times, Stetson, and Josh. It's never been about like me being better than those guys, because like I'm so laser focused on climbing this like gigantic mountain in front of me that it's just like, okay, one foot in front of the other. What's the course of action that I need to take to get there? And then it's just about doing it, man. Like at the end of the day, get your plan, get dedicated to it, and you just got to go for it. And it is, a lot of the time, it is just one foot in front of the other. And it doesn't matter, like, life's tough for everyone. Whether you're at the top, bottom, whatever. Like, life has its trials and tribulations. It will try to beat you up, chew you up, spit you out. Like, life's tough, man. No matter what you're doing, what you're talking about, like, life's just difficult. And just choose your difficult. And like, my difficult, I want it to be pushing myself to be the best version of myself that I can.
Yeah. And when you break it down like that, because people always want to know what like the secret is, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody might look at you or one of those other guys you mentioned, but specifically you, because you've shown consistency. Like Stetson's had a great few years, and it's really remarkable somebody does all that. You've been doing it a lot longer. Like it's probably feels weird for you to be a veteran, like the veteran, like the
it is
like
crazy,
the older guy. Yeah, how old are you now?
Yeah, 27.
27.
And I am like, I'm one of the probably like the 5 oldest guys still going, you know?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because I mean the shelf life on someone who does what you do is a lot shorter than some of the other sports. Just
well, especially at a really high level. That's the thing.
It's,
I mean, you see guys that are uber talented and all the things, like you can ride bulls and make a living, because it's relatively easy to make a living riding bulls. Like, you don't have to be really like that good.
Right. It's not like team roping in that regard.
I mean, like you can be, I say your average bull rider, like your average professional bull rider.
Sure.
Honestly, like, yeah, it takes a lot of work to get to that point, but like you can be, there's just levels, right? Like once you hit professional, like you're obviously like the top X% of what you're doing in bull riding, but like there's a huge gap from your average professional to your elite, and then to like maintain in that elite category, like way difficult, especially year after year. And like year after year, there's new challenges, there's new stuff. Like there's all this stuff that's like going against you year after year. And like, you just got to find a way to push through it, man.
Yeah. Well, and so that brings up even more great questions, right? Because you're saying really enlightening stuff, especially for people who think they might want to do that. Is there's probably a level of athletic ability that separates the elite. Because let's say everybody has the same base level work ethic, which no one does, right? There's going to be people who will do the work that 99.9% of people won't. Clearly, you're one of those guys, or we wouldn't be having this conversation, because it wouldn't make sense for you to be here.
Right.
But if everybody puts in that same base level of work, what do you think the separation is from a guy like you, or you know, I mean, there's other greats you could name, but you're here, so I'm going to say you. You know, what do you think that is? Is it athletic ability?
No, not at all, because all of that stuff's trained, right? Mm-hmm. The number one thing is being the best learner. Like, I would 1,000,000% say that anybody that has success at anything athletically, business-wise, like no matter what you're talking about, it's how well they learn. It's not anything that's like this predisposed destiny that like this is what you're supposed to do. It's like, no, man, it's how intuitive you are. It's your intellectual prowess that can be practiced and learned as well. But 100% it's just about how well you learn, man, because like, especially in sport, the game changes all the time, right? Like you put, and people probably don't even know who he is, but like Bob Cousy, he was a great point guard in the 60s. Mm-hmm. Like you put him up against Steph Curry today, not even the same thing. Like it's legitimately not even the same game of basketball that they're playing. And it's no different in rodeo. Like you see guys come out, and the thing with most champions come out and they set this like super high pedestal of a goal that they are just miles above the competition and like, oh my God, they're the greatest thing you've ever seen. But then what do they do after that? Because in sport, the evolution of sport, like that's now the new normal goal that this 16-year-old is going after. Like it's normal for him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So he's talking about, you know, like before me, if you rode 50% of your bulls, like you were the world champion, cool. Well, so my first year I came in, I rode 60%. Well, like that's the new normal now for these young kids setting the goal, right? Like, yeah, like that's what people are trying to achieve. So if you don't keep learning and keep growing and keep getting better and keep like pushing what you can do, you're going to be caught. It's just a matter of time.
Yep.
And it's a short time in sports and in business too. Like you've always got to be evolving, man. And that's the people that can learn the best, can learn the fastest, can move very fluidly in whatever they're doing. Like those are the people that succeed, period.
It's, you know, and it's funny when you say business, that's my area that I've decided to be in, mostly because fear of poverty, right? A lot of people are motivated by fear of poverty. I certainly was. So I looked at things like rodeo and was like, okay, I know myself and what I would be willing to do. That's poverty. Let's not do that. Let's stop doing that. Try this. But yeah, like the last couple of years for business, it was the most trying time ever. I mean, and the family you're married into would be able to speak on that because they went through it too. But you exactly right. You have to be fluid. You can't be attached to any outcomes. You just have to get up and put in every ounce of work and then be a student of everything. You really do. And that's,
and have a good plan too, right? Because like being a good student means you're going to be able to come up with whatever plan of success and what you want your life to look like.
Absolutely.
Like you have to be a little bit intuitive and a little bit like you have to have some prowess about you whenever you go to like figuring out what it takes to do blank.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
but if you get a good plan and like the work ethic, man, the work ethic is everybody's like, oh, showing up's half the battle. Like, no, showing up is a prerequisite. It's not half the battle.
That's right.
Like, are you kidding? If you want to be average, yes, showing up is half the battle. Cool. Like,
especially
go
in
be
something
average.
like rodeo, where all you have to do to show up is just pay an entry fee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what's so great about rodeo, right? Is it's a pay to play thing. It's like you have to do a certain number of things to get to the NFL, but rodeo, the consequences are so dire for the guy who just decides to show up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so the bull riding's a little different than like most events too. Mm-hmm. Like all the rough stock is because we have such limited entries at like our like marquee mainstay events, mainly because it would be like next to impossible to get thousands of bulls here for all these slacks and these guys to come enter. Plus, you can't get the entries because, like you said, like the danger is glaring, right? It's not something that you can just like, oh, I'm gonna go to my local pro rodeo and I'm gonna go win Reno and I've never done it before. It's like, no, man, like that's not a thing.
No, certainly not. Yeah, that which poses another great question, right? Because with what you're doing, and you've had a couple injuries, you just recently had one, and what does bouncing back? Because I was trying to look and make sure I knew some of the stuff, but I think you were injured in 2020 as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bunch of injuries, honestly, and those are just obstacles that you just have to get through, right? Some of them require surgery, which is what my shoulder is going to require. A lot of them don't, and it's just like it's more work, and it's figuring out how to tweak your style to where you can get around, this, that, the other. Like I don't have a UCL in my riding elbow, which is like the Tommy John surgery that all the pitchers have.
Right.
Was definitely supposed to have that operated, but found a brace that I could make work and just keep riding through it. And especially in a career that has such a short shelf life, like I've tried to stay away from surgery,
right?
At all costs, because like at the end of the day, you're talking 6 months, pretty much an entire year that you're giving away to have any given surgery. Like that's 10% of your career, man. and it's one of those things that, I mean, obviously I could blow my elbow out, tomorrow, whether it was 100% good or whether it wasn't. So, yeah, I mean, you just kind of got to, but back to the making a plan. Like, you just make a plan for whatever injury is thrown at your way. Like, you're going to get hurt. That's just kind of how it is in bull riding. And really, like, the summer run, especially coming down into the fall, which is where a lot of, like, big money rodeos are, it's all about who can just kind of deal with how bad everything kind of sucks at that time. Because, like, everybody's super sore, everybody's tired, everybody's homesick, half the people are broke. Like, there's a lot going on mentally. And it's the guys that, like, at the end of the day, man, like, your bull runs in the chute and you swing a leg over him. Like, whoever can block that out the best is who's going to win. And generally speaking, especially in the bull riding and the rough stock events, whoever ends the season strong is going to be the guy that really has success at the NFR.
Yeah.
Strictly because mental fortitude comes into play.
Yeah. And being a veteran of the game and having been doing this for coming on almost 10 years, how do you maintain that, right? Because when all of your baseline necessities, it's not a starvation thing anymore. You've proved enough. You haven't hit your goal. Is it just that laser focus that will block out? Let's see, when you get hurt, your body's flooded with, endorphins and oxytocin and all these stress hormones when you get hurt in something like that, which creates just baseline, your brain goes to a fear mentality, because that's how our bodies are worked to try to keep us alive in those situations.
Yeah.
How do you handle like the fear aspect of that, you specific, to keep that from being a hindrance to your performance later?
Like, there's really just no place for it. And yeah, I mean, for me, I've really never like felt that emotion like that strongly. And I guess it's probably because I just kind of try to block everything out or whatever. Sure. But, like, I've just always viewed it as a negative thing. And I guess since I've always viewed it that way, like, I've never really thought about that. But, yeah, like, there's no place for fear in, like, what I do. And at that point, like, it just doesn't have a place in my life. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, I guess just, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's literally just like, whether it's me ignoring it or not dealing with it or whatever, I don't really know, but it's definitely, there's just no place for it, period.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to put it. But that takes a certain level of mental fortitude. It just seems like the more talking to you here that you're just built a specific way. And probably most people who go into bull riding specific, because when you're looking at rough stock, there's consequences with all of it. But yours is the highest consequence version of rough stock, period. It just is by default based on the animal. And you probably do have to be, because like I look at myself, I'm like, well, there's a lot of things I haven't been scared of. Like I've done cage fighting before for a few years. I've done those things, but I never once thought that I wanted to bull ride, not one time ever.
Right.
Because I'm like, nope.
Well, it's just like whatever you're comfortable with too, though. Like there's no way you could, throw me in a taxi cab and like make me drive taxi in New York City, right? Like that would be very, very stressful, and like I would be fearful of that situation, right? Just because I've never done it before. But like I've been riding bulls and grew up riding sheep and calves and all that when I was 3-4 years old. So like I'm very comfortable with it. Like obviously I know what the outcomes could be, but it's it's just one of those things. Like I guess I just like block it out so vividly in my mind that it's just like it has no place there, that truly like over years and years of repetition, like it just like fear is not really an emotion that I feel strongly about very many things at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think all the formative people have that. And even if they do have fear come in, they recognize it and do find a way to just remove it. 'Cause it's not really it's not a real thing most of the time.
Oh, right? It hardly ever is.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you thought about it, have you ever met one of those people who's just like chronically afraid of everything? Have you ever met one of them?
Or
do you know somebody like that?
Not really, no. I mean, like I know they're out there, but yeah.
Yeah, so I do know somebody like that. I'm around them, not all the time, but enough. Actually, they work for me. But they're chronically afraid of every scenario that could possibly happen. And, it's like, well, this could happen and this could happen. And they're like Rain Man, but it's like they're Rain Man with everything that could possibly kill them or go wrong in their life.
Right.
And so they live just in this constant state, the exact opposite state that you clearly live in. And they never move. Like they're older and they're stagnant and they're not better or worse than they've ever been in their entire life.
Right. Yeah.
Luckily they don't listen to this, but if they did,
that's crazy to me though, because it's one of those things like, well, and even bull riding, right? Like so worst case scenario, like I guess me being a believer in Christ, like death does not really like intimidate me that bad, right? Obviously like wouldn't be ideal, but it's not something that like I'm like, oh my God, like I could die doing this. Because at the end of the day, like, you know, it's just life. Like you could die walking across the street to go get your Starbucks coffee too.
You could.
your community coffee.
Plug.
But yeah, it's I don't know. Like I've just never really been one of those guys that lives in fear, man. Like it doesn't have a place in my life.
Yeah, it's interesting. And there, do you read a lot? Do you listen to audiobooks?
I do,
like what do you listen to?
My favorite guy is Jordan Peterson.
Oh, that's my favorite guy too.
Yeah,
one of them.
100%. Like and it was kind of funny. Like when we were talking earlier about, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but my mind went to whenever he was talking about like being a dangerous person.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the most famous. I remember when he said it originally.
So
like that
good.
line is like 8 or 10 years old. He said that a long time ago.
Oh yeah,
he's repeated it. But I mean, I've been listening to Jordan Peterson. I don't know how long you have, but for probably 6-7 years.
I was about to say probably 2015, 2016.
Before it was really cool to listen to him.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and yeah, he might be one of the most formidable people. Like if you really listen to him and you hear everything he's going through and like how like strict his lifestyle has to be just to like baseline get up in the morning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. What's your favorite thing that he's put out? Have you read both the books?
No, I just read 12 Rules for Life. I haven't read the other one.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I think like his 12 Rules for Life are just good, period. Which I'm not like a huge fan of the way he portrays like the whole lobster thing in the first chapter, but I think that's like
it was a little much.
He definitely went like a little too deep for my liking in that, but like 100%, like stand up straight with your shoulders back has to be like one of the like the biggest things, and you hear it all the time, right? Like all of his stuff runs very parallel with all like the old cliches.
It does.
But they're cliches for a reason, but the way he kind of breaks them down like in a psychological way is like really, really cool to just listen to, I guess.
It is.
You can just take a lot more from it than just like, oh, stand up straight, son. And it's like, well, why? And like if a guy like that breaks it down, like what it actually does psychologically, like not only to you, but other people around you too, it's cool.
It is, yeah. And it kind of speaks to the way that men were before. Like pride was really, like pride can be a very damaging thing, but like just your average level of pride, I don't know what you want to call it, because I mean pride can be one of those things that ruins your life, but
I think more self-respect than pride, right?
Self-respect, yeah, and just integrity in oneself. Like, why do you stand up straight with your shoulders back?
Yeah.
Because I'm formidable,
yeah,
right, and I have a level of respect for myself, and I want everybody to know that, and
right.
then also and give that back.
Yeah, for sure.
Guys, rock and roll denim has absolutely changed the game when it comes to the performance and style in Western jeans. Top competitors like Shad, Tim O'Connell, Shelly Morgan, you name it. Your boy right here, we're all wearing rock and roll denim. Inside and outside of the arena. It gives you the flexibility you need to win, as well as looking absolutely great in your interviews, appearances, whatever it is you're doing. Even when you're just doing podcasts like me. I had a chance to go to Rock and Roll Denim's factory the other day and pick out all the pants I wanted. Here's the thing. I got to try on a bunch of their new jeans. I love the men's revolver jeans with the reflex stretch technology because they're comfy. They're not stiff like some of the other jeans. Go check them out at rockandrolldenim.com or follow Rock and Roll Denim on Facebook and Instagram for the newest trends in Western fashion. rockandrolldenim.com. Have you heard of Ryan Holiday? Like he has a book called The Obstacle is the Way. It's like stoic stuff. I've actually talked about it a few times, but now he just went on Joe Rogan just now. Okay. And like this stuff has become really trendy in the last like year, but I heard about him. Maybe it was through something Jordan Peterson said about 4 or 5 years ago. And he's got a book called The Obstacle is the Way.
I'll have to check it out.
You got to check that one out. Yeah. That one's killer. Like it's a little philosophical, but it's all about like taking the hardest route and why you should do that. And it talks a lot, because we were talking about fear of death. It talks a lot about not fearing death, because every day that you're not dead is a gift, because you could be dead anytime and you will be.
Right.
So the whole premises of it is that like everything you do it with the mindset of, death is coming. Right?
Oh yeah, that's a certain fact, right?
Remember,
like at the
you
end
will
of the day.
be dead.
Yeah.
So live your life knowing that fact.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Yeah, so you would probably like that, especially with what you're trying to accomplish. Like, that's one of the things that is really remarkable about a guy who goes and takes on nearly an insurmountable challenge, like what you've decided to, or any great athletes, because you are a great athlete, and you get that for all time. As long as the sport exists, even if you're dead and gone, that'll be there, and that's pretty remarkable.
Well, I think it just sets a new standard for the 6 to 10-year-olds age Kimzey to look up to, right? And I think that's kind of like we talked about motivation, hit on a little bit. That's kind of like the driving force for me now, especially just becoming a new father. Like, not that there wasn't great blueprints, for me to go aspire to be like, but like at the end of the day, with evolution being what it is, nothing being stagnant, like there's always room for improvement, right? And that's if my blueprint can help some other kid make something of himself, like no matter if that's in the arena, out of the arena, whatever, like if it can improve his life, like I think it is like a duty and an honor for me to be able to like do that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and what's so funny is like I've done a ton of these shows, and the whole reason I wanted to create this podcast a few years ago was for this kind of thing, right? Because we talk about people like Jordan Peterson and reference other athletes, and it's like there's all these places you can get this really deep, high-level conversation that people need so badly out there, but there was nowhere to really get this from a guy like you. And I think like just listening to how philosophical you are and deep, and obviously clearly a really smart guy. And
I try to be.
Yeah, what's important, right? But people generally, like, and I don't mean people in rodeo, but people generally wouldn't think, like the preconceived notion about cowboy is hillbilly, redneck.
Oh, yeah.
That's why this is so important, because you get to see a guy who wears a cowboy hat, wears boots, wears Wranglers, ties himself to a bull, speak on these high-level topics. I think it's so valuable. So I'm really glad that we're getting into some of this stuff, because it should, who better to hear this stuff from than people who do rodeo, because it's just such a hard-fought industry.
Right. It is, and it's, man, like, you want to talk about just a dog-eat-dog world, too. Like, you, for people that don't know, I guess, I'm sure most of the listeners probably do, but, like, legitimately, like, my road was, like, grew up going to junior rodeos, all this stuff, and then, like, you turn 18 and you literally just buy your card, and they're like, go figure it out, kid.
Yep.
What? Like, there's no coaches, there's no mentors, there's no, like, nothing. Like, all of it is all self-learned, self-taught. The great thing is like, there are a lot of people that are willing to help in the rodeo world, but for the most part, man, like, you throw a bunch of juvenile kids into the real world of rodeo, which is just like mind-blowing at the time, and it's just like, it's kind of just a sink or swim thing, man. And like, that's not, it's not, it just could be more helpful, I guess, like, to these young kids, because like, especially in the rough stock end too, like, a lot of kids like, don't come from great scenarios at home. They don't come from a whole lot of money. Like, bull riding's generally like their outlet, you know what I mean? And you get thrown into the world with not a whole lot of guidance, for sure. And it's no different than anything else. Like, there's bad guidance, good guidance anywhere you turn. And yeah, I mean, it's, hopefully we can just, lessen the learning curve, I guess, for these young athletes coming in, because at 18 years old, man, like, you don't know a whole lot of stuff, and that's something that
nothing.
Oh, nothing.
And the problem is, you think you know more than you really know. That's the hard part about being that age.
Oh yeah,
is you just, like, you almost have an ego about you, especially if you do hard things and you're mildly successful at them. Like, I wonder, like, was ego getting ahead of you ever a thing when you were younger? It's something I struggled with, so I wonder if you did.
Probably not, like, getting ahead of me, no. But it was always one of those things too. Like I never really like thought I was like that good, I guess. Especially growing up, like I had more of a complex of like feeling unworthy than anything. Because like there was always like caveats to a lot of my success too. But yeah, so no,
Explain that when you say caveats.
Well, so like there was always, it just always seemed like everything happened for me to like be successful, I guess, at the time. And I didn't realize like what like my body of work was. Like it was always kind of like me comparing to everyone else, because I always thought everybody else was kind of like better than I was, had more experience, whatever. So like the first year that I made the finals, I came in first. JW came in second. He didn't go to 40 rodeos that year. So like they took a lot of his money away. Like at that time, JW Harris was the reigning world champ. Like, you know, he'd won the world 4 times. Like he was the man. And it was like, you know, for whatever reason, like he didn't make it to his 40 rodeos. They took some of his money away. I don't know why he did that, but whatever, you know. So it was like, well, you know, like what would happen if JW had all this money? And instead of like me looking at my body at work and it's like, man, I rode 8 out of 10 bulls at the finals, like set all the records, like all the things that I did, like I did great, but I never really thought about that, you know.
Was that something other people were saying that creeped into your brain, or was it something that you just thought by default?
Yes, like I would say probably a little bit of both for sure. And like the older I get, obviously the more like I'm way more equipped now to just like, well, like I'm good, I'm gonna do my thing, you know, whatever. But yeah, it was, I don't know, I'd say a combination of both for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because, yeah, if you look at things through that lens, well, another thing that's interesting if you think about it is now people do the reverse,
right?
Where you're in JW's shoes, right? I'm sure that's happened, and we're like, well, Sage wasn't this, he wasn't that, so that's why, or what have you. So I think everybody just has that season, right, where you're that guy, and then eventually you're the other guy.
Oh yeah, oh for sure, and that's, I mean, yeah, like 2020, perfect example. Like had ankle surgery.
Yeah,
and then like
it's a great thing. People were saying that like crazy. Well, if Sage would have been 100%, it would have went a different way.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, man, you can't take that title away from Stetson, right? Like Stetson rode great all year long. You know, went in and killed it at the finals. Like he was the world champion that year, and I guess I've never really like put the shoe on the other foot. With that, because yeah, I'm sure like there was a bunch of negativity, but like at the end of the day, man, like he was the best bull rider. Period. Like it is what it is. He's got the buckle to prove it, right? Like 100%. So yeah, I've never really thought about like looking at that from the other side either.
Yeah. It just helps maybe have like rounded thoughts, I guess, on it. Because did you ever like when you started having your success that you did, especially at that young age, did you ever hit like any mental barriers where you're like, you know, I think I have enough. Maybe I don't want to keep pushing. Like, were there times where you had to force yourself to get up in the morning, or really force yourself to buckle down, where you started backing off a little bit just from maybe comfortability? Because you see it with, like, I always like to use the example of like Conor McGregor, right? There was this great rise, and he was the man, and then out of nowhere, he just like is a freaking disaster. And you see it a lot. You saw it with Mike Tyson. You've seen it with a lot of football players, basketball players. It's like
golf too, man. Jordan Spieth, same way. Like he was the best player in the world for several years, and like now he's struggling to make cuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, like I would say honestly, 2020 was that year for me. Like there was so many like gut check moments for me that year, because. And obviously, like, it was kind of the perfect storm, and I let it really, like, kind of roll my life. But long story short, you know, start out 2020, I'm doing okay. I think I've got, I don't know, like, maybe 15, 20,000 one. Anyway, like, I had an okay winter run. We're getting into the very end of it. And saw him at San Antonio, bull falls on me. Knew immediately that something was wrong, because, like, it was... In bull riding, I guess your adrenaline and stuff's going so hard that, like, if something hurts when it happens in bull riding, like, it's bad usually. So anyway, ankle hurt, like, could barely walk out of the arena. Anyway, got out of the arena. Took me right back for some pictures of my ankle. Take me in for surgery, like, I don't know, a couple days later. Have it fixed. It was the quick, like, the little tightrope surgery that Tua had. Anyway, long story short, like quick recovery, quick little surgery, whatever, blah, blah, blah. come back in 2 weeks, ride at Houston, didn't really do any good there, and then rode at the American and ended up splitting the American title that year. And that was one of the years that it counted. So, like, immediately I was thrown up, like, number one in the world by quite a bit because we really hadn't had that many big rodeos at that point.
Right, it's March.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it puts me in a good place for world standings. And then, boom, like a couple days after, COVID shuts everything down.
Yep.
So I'm in an immense amount of pain because I came back way too early. And long story short, like, it was the first time that I'd ever had a break from my professional career in, 7 years at that point, I guess. And, like, I really liked being home and, like, just living, like, the normal life, I guess, And, yeah, so anyway, it starts back up. Like, the whole season's kind of changed and different because most of our big rodeos are canceled, and we're going to a lot of different places that I really didn't want to be at. And it just took a lot of, like, the fun and the joy out of it for me. And it was one of those things, like, I wasn't looking forward to go get on bulls. So I guess if there was a moment, like, 2020 was definitely, like, that moment, like, why am I even doing this? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's one thing to get juked up to go get on one at Reno for $15,000, but, like, it's a whole different ball game going to, the middle of nowhere and riding for $500. It's like, man, I love this sport, but if I'm not compensated well for it, like, I'm not going to be doing it. You know what I mean? And that was kind of, just 2020 was just a tough year for me. Like, but I grew a lot from 2022 because it was one of those things, like, man, even going into the finals, like, I just wasn't, like, I didn't really even want to go to the finals. And I know that sounds horrible. Like, you tell somebody that, and they're like, oh, my God, like, that's the National Finals Rodeo you're talking about. But it's like, man, my heart just wasn't in it, to be honest with you.
Right.
And it showed in my performance. Like, I didn't ride well all of 2020. That's just how it was. But, yeah, just, retrospect being what it is now, like, you just got to find different motivation. And that's,
So how did you break out of it?
Honestly, so I started working with Paige Champion, Richie's wife. She does online coaching program and would have our calls, and, like, she helped me work through a lot of it. Obviously, like, my wife was, like, my biggest supporter, and she was always in my corner. But Paige does, like, this guided discovery coaching, and, like, we basically just kind of talked through it all and basically just changed my motivation, man, because it was to the point that, like, money was not the motivation, like, winning gold buckles was not the motivation. It was, like, something that truly, back to the Jordan Peterson thing, like, it gave me reason to get out of bed and go to work. So, yeah, just had to kind of just change my focus and change my vision a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the hardest things to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Comfortability. It's so dangerous.
Well, it leads straight to burnout, too, and that was the point I was at, man. Like, I was just tired of it, bottom line. Because, like I said, like, staying at that elite level for X amount of time is difficult, but, like, doing it year after year after year after year after year, it's like something's got to give. You know what I mean? And, like, 2020 was the year that, like, I learned a lot and grew from it. You know what I mean? Like, more than anything.
Yeah.
As a lot of people did, right?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that was, like, the starting point of, and we're still dealing with all these echoes of it and a lot of obstacles, but you got a real good opportunity, and I saw it in my industry, to see who was really, because for quite a while, everything was great across the board. Everything. It was a lot easier to make money, and everybody, not just in business, but just in general, life was pretty dang good. And you get hit with this whole wave of just obscure BS that you don't understand, but it controls your life. Like, just like you said, like, the only roads you could go to were little $500 dink rodeos. Yeah. And that's how it was in pretty much everything. Like, at least, some version of that. Right. And you saw people drop off. You saw people go out of business. You saw people quit rodeoing altogether. You saw people quit other sports. They're just like, I'm just not doing this. And now what's left over is a lot of dogs. Oh, yeah. And now you're fighting with them. Like, I'm sure it's the same way in bull riding, but at least in my industry, it's like the people who are there right now, who are doing well right now, because now's a different obstacle, are the people that you don't want to run into in an alley, figuratively speaking. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess you see a little bit of that in bull riding for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like the field of competition is really good right now, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's some amazing athletes. I mean, when you look at that, like, how much has the since you started, how much has the sport evolved, do you think, in the last decade?
Quite a bit, man.
Yeah,
It's
feels
honestly,
that way.
it's crazy. And even like in the last probably 5 years, I would say more than anything. Like whenever I first came out, like rookie year, like if you were in good shape and you worked out, like you had a distinct advantage on the field. And I know this is like very like broad, whatever, but
Sure.
like distinct advantage, just being in good shape. And that was just always something like, if I'm going to be getting on bulls, like I'm going to be in at least decent physical condition.
Right.
But yeah, now, so you go from distinct advantage to like, there is not a single bull rider back there like that has the extra 10 pounds. You know what I mean? Like everybody is in great physical shape. Everybody like really studies it all. And that's been the great thing with the Cowboy Channel too, is, you know, like all the videos out there on all these bulls, and it's definitely changed a lot.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, you always got to give the Cowboy Channel credit for creating this access to these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there's so much information now
Oh yeah.
that you could consume. Like when you were a kid, there was nothing. You'd have to find tapes or hope somebody had it on camcorders. And now you just go to the internet and you can watch every great bull rider do anything. And right there, that's just elevates you.
Yeah, you can do it on Cowboy Channel, or literally go to YouTube and
You can.
You
It's
can
crazy.
watch hours of anything. Like you can be not semi-professional, but like you can have at least a basic understanding of legitimately anything in the world.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Just right on YouTube.
It's unbelievable. Like, and I think that's part of the problem why just like as like our base level humans are a little bit weaker, because we have so much access to everything. We don't really have to fight for anything, right? Like you have to fight for the things that you want to accomplish, but like the basic stuff, you don't really have to fight for anything.
No, I mean, life's
really.
definitely a lot easier than what it once was, no doubt.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I'm super thankful that it's that way.
It is a double-edged sword, though, for
It
sure.
is. Like, do you ever wonder like what it would be like to run into somebody from 200-300 years ago? Like, what would they be like?
It just always makes me think, like, Shawshank Redemption is one of my favorite movies.
It's a great movie.
And whenever Brooks gets released from, like, I can't remember how many years that he was in the pen, but like he comes out and he's just like, holy smokes, like the world just got itself in a big hurry. Like there's cars going everywhere, you know, all this stuff. Like he was in so long, like he had seen a car
changed, yeah.
and like the whole world changed. And yeah, I can only imagine like 200-300 years, they'd be like, what is this?
Yeah. And there's just no way to really know. But did you watch what was it, 1883, the Yellowstone deal?
I haven't yet. No.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think they did a really good job. Like Yellowstone was okay. It actually took me 3 years. In fact, I talked to people on this show from Yellowstone, having never watched Yellowstone. Didn't mention it. It's like, yeah, it's a great show.
That's not something you could mention
You
at
can't.
that point.
It's like, I actually haven't watched a second of your body of work in my entire life, but here we are talking about it. But that show, like, I think they did a really good job of just showing like how hard cowboys were. Like, and I think it was Tim McGraw or whatever he just played the hardest nosed bastard in that show ever, and they showed it really well. They went so far. Like, do you ever watch like a movie that clearly you know that the women would be absolutely just hairy monsters, and that you just notice like, oh, no, just notice this. Well, that lady's armpits are shaved.
Yeah.
I bet they weren't shaving their armpits back in the feudal era.
Yeah.
But then,
that's
like
fair.
in this show, all the girls grew their shit out. So they were hairy. They had armpit hair, and you're just like, whoa, they really took it far.
People
Their
were
life
just
was
tough,
different
man. That's the thing.
to survive.
Yeah, literally just out of necessity.
Yeah, to hit that Oregon Trail and just be like, you know what, we're gonna go there. Don't know what's there. We're gonna go through the Comanche territory, the Apache territory. We're just gonna do it.
Yeah, just send it.
We wouldn't survive.
No,
not
it's
even
crazy.
the best of us would
Crazy,
survive.
man.
But I think it's really valuable to get to sit down and talk to a guy like you for all the people out there who listen to this and listen to it to get something. I mean, you have a lot of deep information that you're willing to give people and a lot of insight, and you clearly think through things at a really high level.
I appreciate that. Yeah, but I mean, that's back to kind of my point earlier. Like I mean, you have to be able to be successful. You have to be able to think and come up with your own things and like figure out what works for you. And I mean, just kind of a necessity of life, really. That's the one thing that like public school really doesn't teach you. You know what I mean? Like growing up, like you don't learn like deductive reasoning and to figure out like you don't really learn a whole lot of life skills in school, right?
No.
And it's one of those things that, like, the thing that I guess rodeo's done more for me in that, like, you meet a lot of people, you get a lot of, like, I guess just a lot of, like, friction and pull everywhere that you go, and, like, you just kind of got to figure it out, man.
Yeah.
Quickly.
You do. Well, and, you know, you've mentioned it so many times just how short the shelf life is, and you're obviously on the backside of that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so to be able to drown out that stuff, it's got to be really difficult for a guy like you who gets pulled in a lot of directions.
Yeah. It's just an everyday thing, you know what I mean? Like, you just got to figure out what you want your dream life to look like, and then a plan to go get it.
Yeah, yeah, which poses like another question. Knowing that you're on the back 18 of your game, you mentioned golf. I'm not a golfer, but maybe you are.
Back nine. If you're talking
is it the
golf.
back nine?
Yeah.
See how much of a golfer I'm not. I'm like, how many holes?
I feel you.
Are there?
I feel you. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like golf?
I do. Yeah.
Really? Do you play a lot?
Yeah. I play quite a bit. Yeah.
Really?
Whenever I can, but
yeah. So is that going to be like your post bull riding thing that you try to excel at?
Possibly. I have thought about that a lot. There's so many really good golfers out there, though. Like, I don't think I'm gonna quite dedicate enough time to be like top level at golf.
Because even like a average club pro,
Yeah.
that's like
Stupid good.
that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you are done with your competitive career, I mean, have you put thought into like where you're gonna shift that? Because it's not, you can't shut off that success mindset. You can't shut off I'm going to accomplish stuff. So how will you use that energy for, I mean, the real formative, not your competitive years, but really the best years of your life to get stuff done is 30s to 40s. That's like when you come into your own as a man, it seems like.
Yeah.
But you do lose your step in competitive sport. So,
Yeah.
so where do you put that energy?
So I think it's funny that you kind of bring this up because I haven't really talked about it a whole lot. It's something that I've had in the works for the last couple of years. Just kind of spitballing, like, you know, what is, like, you know, the next step for Sage Kimzey. And I think the biggest thing for me, like, this fall, I'm going to get the Become Legendary Bull Riding launched, and it's going to be an online platform to where people can go and at least find the first set of episodes is going to be the basics of bull riding, and it's going to be just kind of breaking down, like, literally exactly what the title is, right? Like, breaking down the basics of bull riding, and it's going to have, like, give this avenue for young guys to be able to at least have a clue, man, because it doesn't matter what junior event you go to. Like, you've got the kid that dad did in rodeo, they know nothing about it, like, they get on and they, like, Google, like, what all they need or whatever. You know, mom wants him in the best protective equipment, but you don't even know what that is really. So it's going to be kind of like a one-stop shop to just as like back to the lesson learning curve. Like, it's going to be the one-stop shop to really kind of like hone that learning curve in, especially for people that, like, don't know a whole lot about it. Because it's going to be a way for me to give back to the sport at the end of the day, and that's a sport that's given me so much. Yeah, something I'm pretty passionate about. So we'll see where that goes, but I think there could be a lot of stuff in that. I mean, on the instructional side of things, because it's I wish I knew at 18 what I know now.
Right, don't we all?
And that's the thing. I mean, if I can help pass that along, to the next generation, and just help the sport at the end of the day, that's going to be something that really fulfills me. And hopefully I can make a living doing it too. So.
Yeah, and that's good to hear, and like really nice to hear from a guy like you. It's one thing to point out the things you don't like about the current situation. It's a whole nother thing to freaking nut up and actually try to usher in change, because everybody wants to complain. It's just a baseline of humans in the modern world is everybody just has a complaint. Rodeo especially, every mother effer has something they want to bitch
about everything.
And
I would say, like, I probably fall into that hypercritical role way too often, because it is one of those things. Like, I do it from a place of, like, me wanting it to be better,
right?
But yeah, it's definitely hypercritical for sure in rodeo,
and it's fine, right? But if you're not willing to try to do something to make it better or change it, then what's the point?
You're just complaining.
You're just complaining.
At that point. I always say that. Like, I try to never just complain about stuff. Because, like, if you have a problem and you don't come to me with a solution,
exactly,
you're just complaining at the end of the day. Like, and that's what I try to never do. Like if I truly have like strong enough feelings for something that I'm going to complain about it, I try to always come up with at least, and even if it's not a good solution, like at least a solution or, you know, a way you could move to fix the situation. And that's one of the things that I want to do with this is like, you know, it's not really like financially feasible for a kid that wants to like try bull riding to go pay $500-$600 for a school plus, you know, another $1,000 in equipment. Like you're talking about at least $2,000 for the kid to get an introduction into the sport.
Yeah, for a toe dip.
You know what I mean? It's like, so if we could change that a little bit, and that's the thing, like the one thing that really got me kind of like interested in it all is like my peers, like you're talking about the top blank percent of bull riders started kind of coming to me and asking me questions and like what I thought about this, that, the other. And it's like, man, if they could learn something, imagine what, you know, 13-year-old Sage could learn from, you know, whoever breaking down like all the intricate parts of bull riding and be able to, you know, stop, rewind, pause, all of this stuff. It's, I don't know, man. I think it's going to be good, and I think it really will like help the next generation for sure.
Well, it will, and it's like it's actually something I can speak on just because I've got fortunate enough to have just this platform's just unbelievable on the amount of people that it reaches and the feedback that well, they get it. I don't. I just come do the show, leave, say thanks guys. But
right.
Like his prime example when Gary LeFew came on, and how many people, like almost uncountable people, were like, wow, I needed that. Wow. And it's like, man, he's been saying this shit forever though.
Forever.
And you guys just found out because it was on a platform that you knew about. Like,
oh yeah.
So if you can take stuff like that with the reach that a guy like you has, I mean, you really could usher in a lot of change, because just from him coming on the show, like we just, like I said, uncountable people were like, that was the greatest thing. That helped me so much. Yeah. And it's clear that you have that kind of that service mindset where you want to help the next generation of people. I mean, I want to do something that's amazing for you.
I want to do something that's meaningful, right? And at the end of the day, like a sport that I care so much about, you know, if I could incorporate that into the meaningful thing, like, yeah, I could go, you know, start a construction business or whatever. But like at the end of the day, man, I would just be working a job for money, and I don't really like want to go down that route if at all possible not to. Like if I need to or want to, whatever, I will. But it's one of those things like if I could help 13-year-old Sage, 10-year-old Sage, 8-year-old Sage, just because there's not a whole lot of help out there. And like you're saying, like Gary, he's like, man, he's the guru for a reason, right? Like
exactly.
He legitimately has probably helped more kids, especially at a professional level, like get to a professional level than like any other bull riding coach out there.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like I went to my first school with Gary when I was 14, 15 years old. But yeah, it's, you know, the internet is like it's like just, I guess it's the way that you can make it like way more scalable.
You can
100%. Because like, yeah, I mean, he's taking in, you know, 10 to 15 kids to all of his schools. And even if he's working every weekend, like you're not talking about changing that many lives. You know what I mean?
But you just can't with an old school method like that. And I think it's fantastic. I think he's amazing. I don't think you have to be a bull rider to get something from Gary, clearly.
No.
Just anybody. I mean, because there's people who reach out to him who do tons of different things. And there's a reason he's kind of is known a lot further than just the sport of rodeo. But yeah, I mean, I think you're probably onto something. And that is a really interesting thing you said, because it's something my sister and I talk about all the time. Because I mean, obviously she barrel races, but she's always like, there's just no freaking meaning in this.
Right.
You know? And I'm like, but there's not a whole lot of meaning in anything if you're doing it for yourself.
Right.
There's just not. You're trying to acquire things like wealth or status maybe, which are important tools so that because you can't do anything like what you're talking if you don't have some form of status in what you're talking about, some merit in that, and then you have to have wealth to support it, to fund it. So you need those tools. But yeah, if you're just self-serving, which winning gold buckles, there's nothing wrong. You have to get to the next level. That's what people don't, like they don't recognize, because some people get mad at people who achieve a lot, right? I don't know if you've ever had those issues where somebody's just mad at you for just being you.
Oh yeah, everybody loves the underdog, man.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. But you have no choice but to self-serve in that way so that you can serve others later.
Right.
Right? Because you just can't do much if you don't.
Well, and it's back to the laser focus, right? Like, yeah, your buddies want you to come out and have dinner with them and, you know, go out on the weekends or like go out on their boat, whatever. But like, man, it's just the price you pay for success, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, what do you want your life to look like? Well, would you rather like not have uber success and like, it's just whatever you want your life to look like. I mean,
yeah,
just know that, yeah, if you're going to be uber successful at anything, like there's a lot of things in your life that are going to be put on the back burner, and like you're probably not going to have as much fun as if you weren't that driven, at least for X amount of time, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the old adage of delayed gratification.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you listen to any, I don't know if you ever listen to like an Andy Friselis or any of those people, the constant conversation is about delayed gratification. So for now, so that you can have those things later. Like, do you want to go ride on your buddy's boat now, or do you want to have your own boat in 10 years?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. And I think that's where it just gets like super clouded for a lot of people, is it's just like, man, like I've got this vision, right? Like I've got this dream for like what I want my life to be. And like I've got my plan. That's how I'm going to do it. Move forward. If the plan's bad, plan needs changing, change the plan. If not, stay the course, man.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Yeah. Any final nuggets you want to offer the children out there? The future Sage Kimzeys or whomever's?
Yeah. I mean, just, you hit on the work ethic thing earlier, but I think that's just kind of the number one thing. It doesn't matter what you're going to do. If it's worthwhile, it's not going to be easy. And I think that's the thing, is like if you can find the good in everything being difficult, that's when I think you can really step up to the next level in whatever you're talking about. Like if you can enjoy whatever process it is, whether it be super easy or super difficult, like if you can enjoy the process on the way, I think that's something that I was really like not so good at the first couple of years in my career. And my wife actually helped me like just enjoy everything a lot more. Because at the end of the time, like you can get all caught up in whatever it is. And I mean, you can make yourself miserable pretty quick, like no matter what you're doing. So yeah, just enjoy the ride for sure.
That's a fact. Yeah. There's so many miserable millionaires out there.
Yeah.
We've all met them or at least know of them.
Yeah.
So that's 100% right. Well, Sage, I was going to ask, because I was wondering about your name. Did your parents name you after a brush or after a monk? But I'm gonna go with monk. Yeah, you're very sage-like. So
we'll go with that.
But yeah, I think it's fantastic, and wish you all the best, and hopefully a speedy recovery. But yeah, maybe you should write a book.
Appreciate
You're
it.
so insightful. I think you should write a book.
I don't know that I'd be willing to dedicate that much time into it.
Get a ghostwriter, and put all this stuff on paper, because it's super useful.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming by, and yeah, we'll let you get on with your day.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. This has been The Gauge, hosted by me, Chance Conrado, produced and edited by our guy Ty Yeager. Shout out to the executive producers Dustin Pointer and Cody Denton. Marketing and content produced by Riley Chone. Make sure to rate and review this podcast, as well as follow The Gauge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to The Gauge wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.